Hello and welcome back to Vox Popcast, the weekly pseudo-academic roundtable of pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with the entire team. We have Hannah and Katya and Wayne. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Howdy doody.
How can you be depressed? It's 2021. The world is better. The world is not magically better.
Technically for us, it's still 2020. First of all. Second of all,
Radio's
I hate
the
to break
theater
it
of
to
the
you
mind.
guys, but the turning of the calendar is not a magical, like, the world reboots. This is not Windows 95.
What? Everybody keeps saying,
Shockingly.
I'm so glad 2020 is over.
No. Every time I see those posts of everyone's like, 2020 is over, 2021 is going to be our year. And I'm like, you guys realize like half of 2021 is going to be the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to take us at least 4 to 6 months to get like critical mass of vaccinations.
Yeah.
Like nothing's changing until like for most people until like spring, summer.
At least. And then like,
If that.
and then everything
But
else.
like even optimistically, like half of 2021 is going to be the same shtick.
Right. And then like
Like,
all the non-pandemic
quarantine.
problems
It's
still
not-
exist too.
If not worse, because we're about to see a massive homelessness crisis because or just
No. We're happy thoughts. Happy thoughts. It's the first show of the year.
I know. Just call your just yell at your congressperson.
Yeah.
I don't care what's happening in the House the week this comes out. Probably there's something you need to yell at your congressperson about.
Almost
And
certainly.
senators.
Whether it's rent forgiveness, aid for people on unemployment, all the things. Just yell at your congressperson. Find an issue, yell at them. They deserve it. Just do it, please.
Well, on that cheery note.
It's probably, hey, I tried. Okay, I tried.
Well, so obviously, all jokes aside, it's the first show of the year for the listener. We're pre-taping, so we're still in December. We haven't actually had New Year's, but last year at the end of the year, we did like 3 New Year's shows in a row. But we did what turned out to be a really fun show, at least from my point of view, which was we had a show that we called Things You Missed for 2019, and we sort of shared some of our favorite pop culture things that occurred that the other hosts might not have seen, that the listeners might not have seen, and that we really enjoyed. And that was a great show for me because that was the show that brought Man versus Bear into my life. Thank
that's
you, Wayne.
right.
Oh, man,
That's
I
right.
forgot about that. Yes.
And I thought, I was looking forward to this like pretty much all year. And
Who knew Man versus Bear would be a metaphor for the rest of 2020?
Right. So, I mean,
I feel like that and
I'm not
Root
joking.
League are like the two things that I've gleaned from this show that have added the most to like my personal like well-being and overall life enjoyment.
Right. And it was great because no joke, the second we finished recording that episode last year, we finished recording and then I went in the other room and I got Steph, my wife, and I said, we need to watch this show. And she's like, what show? And I'm like, don't worry about it. And she's like, what are we watching? And I'm like, it's called Man versus Bear. And she's like, that sounds ridiculous. I was like, no, we're watching this now. And we sat down.
Really,
And-
it's yes and.
Yeah, it's 6 episodes. I think there were 6 episodes. And we watched them. We streamed all 6 episodes in a row. It was just like, oh no, we're not. Yeah, we've got this is everything to us.
So really, this is a show where we try to figure out, has 2020 come up with its own Man versus Bear?
Right. So we're going to share some of our favorite things that we maybe didn't devote a whole episode to. And, maybe we'll come up with something that's awesome and we will devote a whole episode to. But
Yes, we will.
Yes. Well, spoilers, but these aren't, we could very easily, like, I'm trying to think, we could talk about Tiger King or Queen's Gambit, which is a show on Queen's Gambit last week. But those are things that everybody saw. This is things that maybe you didn't see, or maybe some people saw and we just saw or read or heard or whatever. And this is just our opportunity to sort of share some of our favorite, not best of 2020, but best of 2020 that you missed.
Yeah, and I think
we missed everything.
Yeah, the obvious joke here is, what did I miss in 2020? My life.
Yeah.
It makes this show more difficult because I didn't see concerts. I didn't go to movies. My library was closed. I wasn't being exposed to new books the way I typically am.
The Rocket City Trash Pandas did not begin their inaugural minor league baseball season.
Okay.
So it made making a list for this year a bit more difficult.
So we're all going to talk about, things you missed. The paint on my wall was No, I think there was still some content. I sat down.
And a lot of it, I feel like, at least most of my things were content specifically because like 2020 was a crappy year, and like all of the media content people were just like fiddling their thumbs at home. So you know what? There was surprising stuff considering.
Yeah, and I sat down and made a list of stuff that I was like, well, let me go. And I spent like an hour earlier today. What did I actually watch or read this year? Mm-hmm. And since I was trapped at home, since I wasn't going to movies, since I wasn't, going out and hanging out with friends, I had a lot of free time, and I actually did consume more things, probably a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have given a chance to. Yeah. If if there were anything else to do with my life, there's some stuff that I wouldn't have watched. So.
And for me, a lot of it was catching up on old stuff. So it's not really new stuff in 2020. I binged some old shows that I had missed.
Yeah.
And in the first part of this, when things first closed down, I didn't have access to a library, and the iPad I had then could no longer run the apps that allowed me to read things. I was rereading stuff off my shelf, so not new things. That's changed, but yeah, for the first part of it, it was difficult.
Although, guys, did you recall that the new Emma movie, which is fabulous, actually did come out in 2020 before the world shut down?
Yeah, it was the last movie I saw in theaters.
So there you go. I didn't get to see it, and I wanted to. It was on my list of things to do with my AMC VIP, whatever AMC called their movie pass thing.
A-list.
Yeah, A-list. See, it's been so long since I was able to use it that I can't even remember. But that was on my list of things that I would have gone to see in I think like March, and that and Onward, and I didn't get to see. I got to see Onward online.
Oh yeah, but I watched that online. That's right.
Emma is on HBO Max.
Oh, okay, I'll have to
catch it. For those of you who would like to catch it, and if you think that Jane Austen is kind of prim and proper, this is the adaptation for you because it is irreverent. It perfectly captures her humor, and the costumes are
immaculate. They are spectacular. I would watch that movie on mute just to look at the costumes, and it's not even a period that I enjoy the fashion of, especially. It's great. And I don't believe it commits the sin of Ugg boots, although I'd have to really look and double check. Which you should go listen to the historical fashion episodes, mainly the one on Corsetry. I think, did we mention the show? I don't remember.
Yes, we did.
But basically, this is the year that Katya learned by watching all of the historical sewing YouTubers that apparently historical films routinely have people wear Ugg boots. Mm-hmm. Ugg boots have no relation to almost any historical period in fashion. Like, I really
do have a relation with fashion.
Right. And yeah, I use the term fashion very loosely. Like, I could sort of see like early, there are like early like medieval boots and stuff where it's like leather stitched together into like moccasin situations, but like no, just, which I guess this is maybe the thing I certainly did not miss, and no one on the show has missed because I just report back occasionally. But historical sewing YouTube, it's been around for a long time. I feel like it's gotten even weirder this year, and you should go watch it.
It's enjoyable.
And I was just to go back to Emma, because I do want to see it. It stars Anya Taylor-Joy, who we talked about in detail last week on the Queen's Gambit show. So
yeah, she actually here.
She is a fabulous actress who I think, every big break that she's ever tried to have keeps getting ruined by, the world conspiring against her, because Emma came out right as the pandemic was starting. New Mutants was New Mutants.
I don't know. Like, I feel like it's in some ways actually, like, I'm sure it's ruined some things for her this year with the releases and everything, but like the Queen's Gambit, had we not all been glued to our televisions because we have literally nothing else to do, would it have been as much of a splash?
No, I don't think so.
And
yeah.
Even Emma, the fact that like only 5 movies came out this year, like it was an exceptional film. It was going to get attention, but like she probably was a much more prominent actress this year than she would have been otherwise, just because there was so much attention on right. There was so much attention on things that she did. So like yes, but also.
Awesome.
And look, when the pandemic originally caused the lockdown in March, I ordered 2 things shipped to my house, Emma and Knives Out. And I cannot tell you how many times I watched them for comfort because I've needed them. So highly recommend that. If you're looking for comfort.
Did you not see Knives Out yet?
Oh, no, I saw it in November. I went and saw it in theaters like 3 or 4 times. That's how much I love that movie. That's not a thing I missed. But if you somehow missed it in 2019 and then 2020, you should remedy that because it's amazing and funny and delightful.
Awesome.
Formally, what have we missed, y'all?
Well, I mean, there's 3 things already. So, so what else?
What other films, maybe, I guess, since we've been talking about film?
I don't know how many people missed this or saw it. It is surprising because this was the film that I was so happy to get in our box office game. And luckily it released right at the beginning of January. So I feel like some people went to see it, but it's one of those heady Oscar film things that I go to see and I don't feel like enough other people do. 1917. If you haven't seen 1917, go out and see it. Rent it.
If I go out, we say stay home and see it.
Yes. I mean, find out where it's streaming and stream it. It is amazing. It is a World War I drama, and it uses it's a trick. It's not really a single shot, but it uses the single shot trick that Birdman used, where it's constructed such that the film appears to be 2 hours of one take of this there's a message that the British forces find out that there's going to be, I think it's British, maybe they're American, I believe they're British.
They're British.
Finds out that there's going to be a secret attack 100 miles away. So they send these 2 guys to go tell the front, don't do this. It's a trap. And it's just they're attempting to get from point A to point B in the middle of this war. And then war going on around them. It is phenomenal. And I absolutely recommend that.
Say if you think like me, oh God, not another man film of war, where they feel in their feelings. I mean, it is kind of that, but also it's a ticking clock movie, and it's much more edge on your seat. A lot of the more ponderous, shall we say, dramas.
Yeah, I don't really like war movies that much. It's it on paper, it very much is the movie your grandpa likes. If you read the description, you're like, oh, this is a dad, not even a dad movie. It's a dad who's old enough to be a grandpa movie. But it's Hannah, you've seen it. It's the best possible version of that.
There, for some reason, there's a 10-minute sequence with a French woman, and it really annoyed me. I won't spoil it for you. That's my major complaint about the film, and I don't have many. It's just really well made. I think that if you're just looking to be thrilled for 2 hours, this is one of those movies.
So that was the best movie I saw in theaters this year. Of the 3 films I saw in theaters.
So a couple weeks ago, and this is available on Netflix already. We actually went to a theater for a birthday thing. There were a whole 7 of us there, sitting in various corners of the theater. We went to see Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I liked a lot. Just filmed here in Pittsburgh. I recognized a lot of people in the credits, based on an August Wilson play. So very dialogue heavy. Chadwick Boseman's last film. Knowing the fate of Chadwick Boseman, you can see it in this film. He's not buff Black Panther. He's thin and sickly, which works for the character, but it was more than that. We now know. But yeah, I thought it was really just very good. Just, stage play adapted to film that's all based on conversation. Really intense and well filmed.
I haven't actually seen that yet. I was going to try to watch it in time for this show, but there was just too much going on. And what I do know is I know what it's about, and no spoilers, but I also know that Boseman is getting Oscar buzz for it.
Yeah.
With the caveat of no, we would be talking about this even if he hadn't died.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing.
The whole movie has Oscar feel to it. Like I can see him not being the only aspect of this movie that gets some kind of Oscar nod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that film.
So yeah, and I think it premiered on Netflix either the same day it was in theaters or whatever. But say we did an event. So
sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to. That I'm definitely gonna check out.
A friend of mine posted. I just saw this on Facebook like half an hour before we signed on to do this, and I find this interesting. Just we're talking about nothing came out, whatever the movie thing. This guy is a movie. He is to movies as Mav and I are to comics. Just it's his thing, and he makes an effort to see everything. And he was talking about making his best of list of the year, and he was bitching about all these things, all these people posting out. Well, nothing came out. How can you have a best of list? And one of his friends commented. He said, my friend whose list I posted the other day, he had 32 10 best contenders in 2020. He saw approximately 480 movies from 2020. That's a record for a single calendar year. Mm-hmm. So yeah, stuff was released, not necessarily in theaters, but I read that as like, what?
Yeah.
Here I'm struggling to come up with the 4 films I saw this year.
Well, I watched a lot of movies online.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that's how he did as well.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of like what it's more that we're not, I think, as aware of what's coming out and or may not have the same access we're used to.
Yeah, he probably couldn't list the same graphic novels I can.
And maybe that's like part of why we're doing the show. I think since we are all been, basically in the theater on our couch for the last 9 months now, I think there's probably a lot of content, not just us, but everybody, even the listeners, everybody is consuming without really thinking about it just because, I've just got to have something on, I was
just going to say, I've gotten desperate enough to agree to watch The Crown again. I find incredibly boring, just the record.
So you're not recommending The Crown?
Not. I find it
anti-recommendation.
Oh, I thought you were going to recommend what, something that I know is one of probably my favorite movie of the year, which I know you also enjoyed, Palm Springs.
Palm Springs.
Yes. So good.
I thought I didn't like Andy Samberg when he was on SNL, but I was wrong. And I take back every negative association I've ever had with the man.
He stars on like your favorite television show.
It's not my favorite. Yeah, like between Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I realize again has some issues. You can listen to our episodes on propaganda for that.
Issues.
Yes, and Palm Springs. Like between that, I'm like, oh, Andy Samberg. I never knew.
Katya, Wayne, have you guys seen Palm Springs?
No.
It is delightful. It is Groundhog Day. It is we're in this world where apparently Groundhog Day is just the genre now. The time loop movie. It is Groundhog Day, but a rom-com, and it's delightful.
Rom-com with explosions and dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
Explosions and dinosaurs. I was going to say like Groundhog Day, which I don't know. I enjoy the movie, not my fave. And then rom-coms. Like two things. One thing I'm kind of about, and another thing which I actively avoid. And I was like, do I like this? Explosions and dinosaurs. There we go.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just giving the concept. It's very well done. It is one day instead of a Groundhog Day where it's just Bill Murray repeating the day over and over again. It is, I can't remember the woman's name, Christina.
It's Kristen Milotti and Andy Samberg, but some combination of people.
Yes.
The same day over and over again.
Yeah, it's but primarily, most importantly, the two characters. This woman finds herself caught in a time loop, and once there, she's not the only one in the time loop. She finds out this kind of annoying guy played by Andy Samberg is also in the time loop, and they have to learn to sort of navigate this world. It's great, and they're. I mean, it does the thing that rather than trying to do the rom-com thing of everybody's just like these nice, wonderful people. It does the sort of quirky comedy thing of these people are not the greatest. They're kind of annoying, and maybe you wouldn't really want to be trapped in a time loop with either one of them because they're not the best people in the world. But given that you got to make the best of this.
Also, it's kind of good placey in that it actually like deals with people being kind plan terrible and thinking about like what that means, as opposed to just like, look, these are the leads, and even no matter how terrible they are, you will root for them because that is what the genre is.
Because
they discuss the philosophy. They discuss the philosophy of it. Like, if you are immortal, if the day always resets, does morality still matter? And, because can you just go kill somebody even though they'll be alive again tomorrow? And that question is dealt with. It is an interesting. It's an interesting philosophical view on what you do in the speculative fiction world. And the two leads are just, they're lovely together. They're really good.
So, okay, this is technically, it has not fully realized itself at the time of recording, but I've been kind of avidly following this for a while now. But so the youths are on the TikTok, and I am not personally on the TikTok. I'm not.
Grandma Katya is too old for the TikTok.
It's mainly, I just like don't. Instagram is not the only social media platform I use anymore. I just don't. They're not my favorite way to spend my time.
I've gotten very tired.
Especially this year, it's all the same things, and I'm exhausted by the amount of like productivity porn that shows up on all of these things, especially this year, of just like, if you haven't started 8 businesses and like run a marathon in quarantine, what are you doing with your life? And it's like, this is not helpful, guys. Anyway.
Do you know that Shakespeare wrote a play during the plague?
Yeah, great. Like, cool. Good for Shakespeare.
Yeah, he's
like,
dead now.
Right. Like, what do you want from me?
He also did way more opium than I have.
That's true. That's true. Well, that just took a turn for the weird. Anyway, speaking of gargantuan creative endeavors, we'll bring it back. The reason I've been kind of avidly following TikTok in a secondhand fashion is because of Ratatouille, the TikTok musical. So this started a couple months ago when I believe a high school teacher or school teacher of some variety basically posted on TikTok a Broadway musical style like song she had written for funsies about Ratatouille, which happens to be her favorite Pixar movie, which was getting shared around the TikToks as one does. And other people started making other songs and puppets and choreography and costumes. And it sounds like it just basically snowballed over the last few months to the point where like actual real life, like Broadway people have gotten involved. And we learned recently that it's actually going to be a real show. Streaming started on January 1st. January 1st started for about 72 hours. And all of the proceeds for this musical, which is being like with people from all over Broadway, but also inspired by people from everyone from like high school theater kids on up to like very fancy people. And all the proceeds are going to benefit the Actors Fund, which I believe is basically supporting out-of-work actors during the time of COVID. Cool. And I'm like, this is beautiful and good and wholesome. It's the kind of news I needed to close out 2020. Mm-hmm. I will probably be buying tickets to it, depending on how much they are.
That's awesome.
But I think especially it's like that was like, I think most of the things actually I was really drawn to this year were just like random people like making YouTube videos or like making TikTok stuff. Even though I'm not on TikTok, I only consume it when it gets posted elsewhere. Of just like people making stuff, because what the hell else are we going to do? I kind of like that 2020 in many ways is like the year of the indie creator, of just like people putting dumb stuff on the internet and seeing if it takes off somewhere. Yeah. So I
have a similar one to that, sort of.
Cool. I have a couple, so go for it.
Well, in the vein of just people making things, and it's a little different in that it is. You said movie adjacent. This is specifically movie adjacent. It was so it is I'm going to call it a film. But the film is called The Other Side of Solitary. We'll come back to that in a moment. You know how this thing's been happening all year, that these famous actors get together and I'm going to do it. We're going to do a table read. We're going to do a table read recreating the last episode of 30 Rock, or recreating Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or recreating whatever. And it's just, It's a Wonderful Life, and it's just actors sitting around and they do a table read. Well, This is a table read, but it's a table read that happened in a little bit of a different way. I heard about this for the first time on the Protagonist podcast, friends of the show, they had the writer directors that were attached to this film on as guests. And what happened was they wrote this film that they were shopping around and they were closing deals. And the concept of the film was these, again, rom-com ish, but it's a different kind of rom-com because it was a man and a woman, both of whom are agoraphobic for different reasons. They meet in basically I guess you'd call it a support group that takes place over Zoom. So they meet in like a Zoom support group. And this is about how their relationship develops as they suddenly, by chance, happen. I think her cat runs away and then he ends up finding it. And they find out that they live across the street from each other, but they're both afraid to leave their homes. So they never actually go outside. They just communicate via FaceTime and Zoom for the entire movie is the idea. And they were shopping this film around and trying to, and they were casting it. They had done rewrites. They were ready to go. And then COVID hit and they lost their deal because in the middle of COVID, who wants to see an indie film about people on Zoom when that's everybody's life now? So they lost the deal and they got the cast together and they did a table read of the entire film on YouTube. And honestly, I don't think it's any different than the film would have been anyway, because it almost entirely takes place, over Zoom. So you're seeing it other than the fact that there's no outfit changes. It takes place over the course of a year. So there's no outfit changes. But I think effectively you had the actors there. It was basically going to be like this. It is lovely because it's this labor of love. And you can feel the passion in in the entire cast and in the writing. And it's basically just sort of this sort of view of mental illness and relationship dynamics in a world where all physical contact is taken away, at least for the two characters that matter. Everybody else can presumably leave and come and go as they please. So that was one of my favorite films that I saw this year. Not quite a film, at least.
So speaking of also other weird internet things, not quite the same thing. In fact, very different. But another weird internet thing. So have you guys ever seen RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Do you know who Trixie Mattel is?
I can't remember any specific people, but I've seen the show.
Okay. I think Trixie Mattel is on season 7.
They blur together.
Sure. Fair
It's
enough.
like Man versus Bear. Every episode's I enjoy. It's not a complaint about
RuPaul's Drag Race and Man versus Bear. Very similar. I mean, actually,
in that every episode's exactly the same. It doesn't matter.
Sure,
I enjoy it. They're all the same.
So one of the things I think I've mentioned a few times, I feel like for me, I've been watching, part of the reason I have a lot to talk about this episode, I've been watching a lot of nostalgia things of watching stuff I've seen before. RuPaul's Drag Race has definitely been one of them because it's delightful and, psychotically colorful and great. But it has rekindled my desire to follow drag queens on YouTube. And there is a new, I think it's a 2020 thing that Trixie Mattel has been doing. But for some reason, she's been baking with easy baked ovens from different eras. I don't know why this appeals to me and apparently a surprising part of the internet. But it's basically Trixie Mattel in full drag using easy bake ovens. And I'm not just talking about the new ones. She does have a video where it's the new one. But she's also doing she has the original one from I think it's 1960 that surprisingly does not explode. And basically every decade since then. I didn't realize the Easy Bake Oven it's been one of the most popular toy releases in the 20th century, which kind of blows my mind. But anyway, if you need it's I don't know why it's entertaining. I feel like a lot of my YouTube search history, when I look at the things I watch on YouTube, which is a surprising amount of my media consumption, I'm like, why do I watch the things that I watch? But this is one of the ones that I feel like has broad appeal because it's just weird. It's just very weird. I don't know what else to say about it. It's not the kind of weird of Marble League, where Marble League is just a cathartic and pure experience.
So is Easy Bake Oven manufactured by the toy company Mattel? Is that the connection?
Well, she does do. I actually don't know. Let me double. Easy Bake. I think it does.
She had the name before that, I'm assuming, but
yes, Trixie Mattel. Yes. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know it's made by Mattel or not. I know that she is now on Mattel's PR list because she does like Barbie unboxings too.
Okay.
And I think that there's something really appealing about watching like a man in his 30s in drag playing with ostensibly girls' toys. And this man owns more pink in his home than I have ever owned in my life. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I just, yes. 2020 has fried my brain. Trying to come up with lists of things that other people haven't. I think what this show has taught me is that my media consumption habits are like always 2 years behind. Like I find interesting things and weird things that not everyone has seen, but it's never in the calendar year that they came out, ever.
I mean, we all collectively discovered Among Us this year, and that's 2 years behind.
Well, I've got a YouTube thing as well, and it's on YouTube just because it had to be somewhere. I don't know that it would have really mattered because there's no images for it. This is things you missed, and I don't think anybody really missed Hamilton. Hamilton was, one of the, if there was a positive thing that came out of COVID, it's that more people got to see Hamilton than probably would have otherwise. And it was great, for this moment, the world reunited around Hamilton, which is not a new thing. It's been around for years, but like everybody got to see it. I'd never gotten to see it because I didn't get to see it live because I wasn't lucky enough, but I knew all of it already because I'd heard all the songs. And Hamilton is one of those musicals, go back to our musicals episodes, one of those musicals where the entire thing is sung. And after Hamilton came out on Disney Plus, a couple weeks later, a guy named Ricky Downs III posted on his YouTube channel and became a minor internet sensation because he posted what he called Hamilton, but with Muppets. And it is exactly what it sounds like. He goes through, I think it's just him doing all the voices. He might have other people helping him, but he goes through and he re-records Hamilton, the album, in its entirety, but with the voices of various Muppets. So Alexander Hamilton is played by Kermit the Frog. And then Fozzie the Bear plays both Lafayette and Jefferson. And because if somebody plays two parts in the theatrical production, then the same two parts are played by one Muppet as well. And it is awesome. It is just the entirety of Hamilton in real time, every song, but recorded with Muppets. And it's actually slightly longer than the real Hamilton because there are interludes with Statler and Waldorf.
And I have to say that actually most of his Muppets voices are pretty spot on.
Most of them. There's a few where I'm like, but
petition to just like remake many things with Muppets. Can we do this show but with Muppets? Maybe that's what the YouTube is the YouTube is just us, but also with Muppets. Is that an option we can explore?
I'm not doing Muppets. The voices.
Honestly, okay. Unrelated to this episode entirely. I once saw a job listing for an apprentice Muppet, like puppet maker. And I was unfortunately not in my area. It was when I was in grad school. It's not in the state I was living in, but I thought about it for a minute because I'm just like, oh my God, I can sew things. I've been sewing forever. I'm like, I actually have the skills to probably be an apprentice puppet maker. It appealed to me deeply. It's one of the few things I regret in life is not running away to the circus to become a apprentice puppet maker. It wasn't the circus. It would have involved dropping out of a PhD program mid trajectory.
Would that have been such a bad idea? Honestly,
hey man, this is putting out a call there. If there anyone listening who has hookups with any Muppet or puppet Is puppeteers the term? I believe puppeteer is the term. That need an apprentice. I mean, I'm open. Got time.
A friend of mine did actually major in puppetry in college. It is a thing that one can do. Yes. Yes, she did.
Look, if Disney/Jim Henson Studios wants me to write a Jane Austen novel, but with Muppets, you know where to find me.
Couldn't we just do that? Can't we just
Well, you can't. We
can't use the Muppets. We could make
not
puppets.
public domain, but yeah, we could make.
Well, we could make. They don't own puppets.
That's right.
No, they don't own puppets, and we can't do the Muppets though because the Muppets are also owned by Disney.
Sounds upsetting. That sounds upsetting. That doesn't sound right. That sounds.
Yeah, they are the upsetting version of the Muppets. If you watch the film with even just the phrase sounds upsetting. I don't want that word to ever happen again. Actually. Okay, so
anyway, petition to do everything with puppets.
Yes.
Full stop. Always.
Yes. So TV.
Sure.
Okay. Bridgerton.
What is Bridgerton, Hannah? He said,
Is that really a thing that we missed? It barely started happening.
I haven't seen it yet, so I've missed it.
You missed it. You all have to watch it. It has something for all of you. I swear.
Puppets.
Also, like, everyone in my family enjoyed it, including those who have been skeptical of certain genres, it is okay. I mean, like, we should do a whole episode on it because there's so many interesting things going on. Some of which I do not endorse how they handle topics, but it's interesting. Okay, so I'm just so excited. I can't handle it. I'm gonna have to calm down to do a real episode on this. Okay, Bridgerton is the first thing produced by Shondaland. With like Shonda Rhimes' Netflix deal, she's an executive producer. Chris Van Dusen is the showrunner, and it's an adaptation of a romance novel series that is pretty like old by now, by Julia Quinn, about the Bridgerton family. And the first season is a adaptation of the first book, The Duke and I, with like some like stuff from like the other books kind of thrown in. And it centers around the Bridgerton family and the London season in the Regency period and the Bridgerton children's quest for love or not, depending on which child you're talking about. And there's a sprawling cast of characters, and it's just like, it's really fun for the most part. And I binged it in one whole day, no regrets. It's the best thing. I can't handle it, except like there are some things that are not the best thing, but it's so cool. It's so interesting.
Are there explosions and dinosaurs?
They're not, but there is a lot of tea.
Period, excellent period costuming
in
place of explosions and dinosaurs.
Yes,
I'm not just a one-trick pony. I'm a two-trick pony.
There's a lot of interesting costuming, and also like you could talk about the politics of sewing in Bridgerton. You might not be happy with the politics of sewing, but we could talk about them. There's also
historically very trash. So if they did it accurately, I will be happy.
I mean, like, okay, look, there are some really like stupid historical missteps in Bridgerton, and I want to clarify.
Are there? I'm talking.
I didn't notice any. I want to clarify that when I say there are historical missteps, I'm not talking about the diverse cast because, well, like, show dresses that, and it's very clearly like Regency fantasy, as other people on the internet have pointed out, and they're exploring a kind of what if world, thinking of like Queen Charlotte if she like was recognized as being a Black woman and using her influence as a Black woman to elevate other people of color in the Regency period. And B, there were tons of people of color in the Regency period in England.
You mean Black people were not invented in like 1965?
Yes, and also they were not all slaves. Although obviously, like slavery was a big thing in the 18th and 19th centuries, and Bridgerton does not address that, which we can talk about later. But anyway, very interesting costumes. Also, lots of erotic boxing, and it's just very interesting.
Did you say erratic boxing or erotic boxing?
I said erotic boxing.
Oh,
Foxy boxing.
Okay.
Hey.
Just, trying to hit all the chords for you guys to watch. Anyway, like, I mean, the romance genre is like the best-selling genre.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's not something that no one's watching. It's like, at this point, I think like number 2 on Netflix right now. But just go and binge it and get your tea.
Also not even been out for a week.
Yeah. For us.
Yeah, get your tea from Lady Whistledown, and who's voiced by Julie Andrews, who like reads these like lines in like an amazing tone.
I look forward to bitching about whatever the so-in politics of this show is.
oh yeah, but like yes. So like there are some things that I'm like, but also like there's a lot of like interesting things that like are very either common in the romance genre or they're trying to do something different, and it's interesting.
So something tells me
whether they succeed or fail.
We will have an episode on this.
Yeah.
If I have my way. Anyway,
I have a feeling.
I'm looking forward to it. I want to see it. So
I mean, and I'm in like the current, like, I wanted a break from like life. So I'm binging this, and I'm going to like not think as critically about it as I will later on my rewatch before we like do a real academic discussion. So I'm a little more gushy than, but there are some things.
I mean, that's how I was with the Queen's Gambit. I was just like, ooh, pretty dresses, yay! And then I was like, oh, but also
I just love that you call our show a real academic discussion.
Hey, we have real academic discussions.
I know.
That, what this show I think exposes is actually what real academic discussions are. This is I hate to break it to y'all. Those of you who have not been practicing academics, this is where like most of the ideas come from, is putting a bunch of academics in a room and having them talk about weird stuff for 2 hours.
We are the dark underbelly of academia.
Right. And then you go do the substantive research and publish the paper.
Right.
Like this is where the ideation begins.
Right. Happens at the bar.
Yeah.
Actually,
No, for real. This is like the most productive part of any conference is the weird conversations you have like between presentations and or at the bar afterwards. Where people just start talking about really bizarre things.
And actually, like if you were interested at all in like my thoughts about good society, that initial kind of like thinking about race and gender in that, I think that actually Bridgerton might be an interesting conversation piece for that. So anyway, I guess everyone can go back and re-listen to our show. Oh, another thing we missed. Another thing we missed in 2020. We missed PCA in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't miss PCA. It's like PCA missed us.
Yeah.
It was both ways.
We were PCA. So any other TV shows or is
I have a few. Well, and I should just point out for anybody who does enjoy this kind of work, PCA did extend their deadline because they've moved it from, usually it's over Easter weekend, but they got the opportunity to move it into, I don't remember the exact weekend, but it's in June now, this year for the listener, but for 2021. So
there's a possibility it might actually happen.
Yeah, they're expecting that they're proceeding as though it will under some circumstance. And they've moved the submission deadline for papers to this month. So you've got, I'm not sure the exact day, but you've got at least a few days that you can submit in January, instead of closing it off in October. So highly recommend it. I have a TV show that I decided I liked. I went back and forth a few times, because I saw it advertised on YouTube over and over again. And it's like, I'll try this. And it really, from the trailer, I thought it was trying to be The Good Place, right when The Good Place was ending. And it's not really. It's called Upload, and it's on Amazon Prime TV, whatever they call their TV service. The premise is it's clearly not heaven. It is a near future speculative science fiction thing. They live in a world where when you die, if the doctors get to you quickly enough, they can take your brain scan and they can upload you to a virtual reality world.
Sure.
And so heaven, and they call them heavens, but there's different companies running their own heavens where you can live immortally on this server. And it's on the internet, so you can communicate with your loved ones. You can continue to have relationships with your loved ones and talk to your mom or whatever. But you live eternally as this VR character, and you interact with people in the real world. And so it stars Robbie Amell, who is Stephen Amell's cousin, I think. Aren't they cousins or brothers or something?
Yeah.
But Robbie Amell as this guy who, computer programmer who is in a car wreck and he's dying, and his girlfriend makes the decision, his fiance makes the decision to have him uploaded. And while now he's in the computer, he's dead. He's in the computer and he's trying to continue to have relationships with his family, with his girlfriend who's still alive. With the people that he meets in this new world. One of the most interesting characters is this kid that he meets who's like 10, but the kid died 10 years ago. So he should be 20, but he's eternally 10 years old in this world. And like, it's weird for him because, his friends in life don't like really want to talk to him anymore, because all of his friends were, like he'll call his best friend who's like, oh yeah, well, like, what do you talk to when you're 20 years old and there's this person who still remembers you as being 10, and they just, how hard it is to have their relationships. So it doesn't go where The Good Place went. It goes in a different kind of, what is life kind of direction. And it was fascinating.
I saw those ads, and yeah, the Good Place comparison. I haven't seen the show, but The Good Place comparison hit me anytime I saw the ad.
Yeah, and I almost didn't watch it because I'm like, oh, what an obvious cheap ripoff. But it's not that show at all. It's just, other than the fact that they're dead, that's where the comparison ends.
Yeah. I don't know that I watched. I binged a lot of older stuff. I don't know that I watched anything that people missed. I did really enjoy Lovecraft Country.
I didn't see Lovecraft Country, but I heard a lot of people liked it.
Yeah, it's not without its problems. Like anything, but overall, I enjoyed it. There were moments that just thoroughly surprised me. There's an episode that is, it's an episode of Afrofuturism that was just kind of beautiful. Really visually and the ideas they were playing with. Just an episode out of the blue, a character who was very much tertiary up to that point becomes the focal point of that episode. And that's part of the point, is that she's been living somebody else's life and overlooked, which they had been doing on the show up until that point. And then suddenly she's the main character in this one episode and plays a part later as well. But I like the whole series, but that episode in particular stood out just in terms of design and theme and ideas they were playing with. It was beautiful. And there's a lot of just jump scare moments and crazy, bizarre Lovecraftian shit. So,
well, so I have one more TV show, I actually have two TV shows because I have to remind everybody, this was on Things That You Missed last year. I said, go watch Harley Quinn, which at the time was hard because it was only on the DC Universe streaming app, which quite honestly wasn't worth the money unless you were writing a dissertation where you needed access to all of it. They just didn't have enough content and it was too expensive. But now the Harley Quinn series in its entirety, both seasons, has been moved to HBO Max, which is worth the money. So if you haven't seen the Harley Quinn cartoon starring Kaylee Cuoco, go watch it. It's amazing. I especially want to recommend it to Hannah and Katya because early this year when we did the Birds of Prey episode, this cartoon is everything that you loved about the Birds of Prey movie and attempts to fix all the stuff that you hated about it. It is really good. It's basically, the premise is Harley has broken up with the Joker and this is her life after that. This is her trying to establish herself on her own / with her best friend Poison Ivy. And it's great. I very much enjoyed this show. Pretty much every episode. There's no down part. But the thing that I really want to recommend, which also started on the DC service, and by the way, the DC service is essentially no more. They're phasing it out because, again, it wasn't really worth it unless you're writing a dissertation. So, but they had this show, Stargirl, and Stargirl is now moving to the CW. Most of DC's stuff has moved to HBO. Stargirl is, I'm going to say, delightful. I don't know, Wayne. I know Wayne knows who Stargirl is.
I like the show. I thought it was a lot of fun. For me, I'm glad you said that because I'd forgotten that was a new show I watched. I enjoyed it. I mean, in some ways, I liked it better than most of the other CW shows. Some of that is, I may have liked some of the others better in the past, but I just got really burnt out on them.
And this is different.
There was a sense of joy about it that's missing from the others.
We should give the premise because she's not a super popular character unless you're a comic book nerd. I don't know, Hannah and Katya, do you guys even know who she is? Have you even heard the character?
Very vaguely because of the show.
Yeah, okay. Back in the 1940s, there was a character by the name of Starman, and who was a member of the Justice Society of America. And then in the 90s, James Robinson did a book called Starman that was about his son inheriting the role. And then when that ended, Jeff Johns and Lee Moder, who is a Pittsburgh native, the artist, created Courtney Whitmore as she was originally the new Star Spangled Kid, who was also a 1940s character. But she inherited the technological, magical star rod, and yes, feel free to laugh at that term. And has taken over that sort of dual role of Star Spangled Kid and Starman in the DC universe. And she's young and loves being a superhero and all that stuff. And the show, the characters on the show are teenagers. This goes back to our episode about adults playing teenagers. They all feel like kids to me. The girl playing Courtney is like 14. I don't know how old she is in real life.
I believe she was like 19 when she filmed it, and she's 20 now. So
yeah,
and she's short, so she's believably
14, 15 years old. Yeah,
she's supposed to be 16 because she has driving, or 15 or 16 because she has driving during the show.
Yeah, that's right. So, but it was it was a lot of fun, and there for us old comics nerds, there were just tons and tons of nods to DC history and continuity and stuff going back to the 1940s and that sort of thing. But that's not essential to have fun with the show. So yeah, I liked it.
And what's nice about it is in a world where we're doing a lot of dark superhero stuff, gritty, grim and gritty, that's addressed, but she is a very hopeful character.
Yeah. Another positive thing with the show is it's also like 10 episodes long instead of 24, making like The Flash, which is the slowest movie show on television.
So
where's the lie, though?
I do have another TV show that I forgot about, a superhero show that I forgot about that wasn't on my list. And this is an odd one because things that probably everyone else saw, but that we missed because I didn't give it a chance for a long, long time. And so it definitely hit the pop culture zeitgeist, and we never talked about it on our show because none of us were watching it. But then I did go and binge the first 2 seasons of The Boys. Mm-hmm. It's great.
And I've heard that from everybody, and I've been really resistant to it because I
hated the book.
I hated the book. It's just kind of everything I hate about grim and gritty comics.
Was the book. Yeah, I hated it. I hated the book, and people kept recommending the book to me. And this is a little behind the scenes as a comic nerd. They were like, "Oh, you should read this. You'll love it." And I was like, "No, I see why other people love it." And it's one of those we're gonna deconstruct. And to me, it really feels like the book feels very Zack Snydery, like a very surface level. We're doing grim and gritty, so superheroes are bad. See what we did here.
They swear and fuck
there's nudity
and kill
and I just did not care at all on the book. And it's better as a TV show. It's way better as a TV show.
I've heard that from everybody. I'm still remarkably resistant to it.
I watched the first one just to make someone shut up, and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they're doing a thing, and it's good. I think one thing that helps it is rather than just one guy figuring it out, I think they have a writer's room that very clearly is not just is it Kirkman that wrote it. It's not just one guy. It's whoever wrote it. And I would imagine there's a more diverse writer's room, so the people feel fleshed out, and there's a storyline, and it's engaging, and stuff makes sense, and it's not just swearing and nudity for the sake of swearing and nudity. So I like The Boys.
Garth Ennis, thank you. Which is another
better than that.
yeah. And the thing is, he's another one. I feel like, not to get too much into a comics conversation on this episode, but he's in that category for me of like, I've seen all his tricks and I'm tired of them.
Yeah, and I think this is other people fixing it.
Yeah, and The Boys definitely felt like that. Aside from my issues with all kinds of stuff that The Boys represented to me, I when the first issue came out, I read it and it's like, oh look, more Garth Ennis. Okay,
yeah, that's about where I was.
So, well, that makes a nice transition into comics if we want to do that.
Go for it. I don't have any, so.
Yeah, I'm not working in the store. I feel like I wasn't as exposed to as many this year as I could have been. I mean, I worked in a store, but it was a very different store and different stuff. I do have a list of things that I did enjoy this year through various things. Last year, you heard me raving about Wiccan Divine. I am really enjoying Once and Future, which is Kieran Gillen's current project, one of his current projects. It's drawn by Dan Mora. It also taps into my Arthurian fixation, and he's doing with this kind of what he did with Wiccan Divine, which is taking a look at a lot of the tropes, and rather than doing the traditional tropes of Arthurian fiction, he's trying to, it's deconstruction, I suppose. Going back to our episode on deconstruction, and it's challenging some of my thoughts on Arthurian characters and what Arthurian narrative should be, and that's something I really enjoy, and I like the tropes and whatever, and there are places where I'm like, but I'm enjoying seeing how he does that. So there are 2 trades of it out so far. I guess technically it started in 2019, but the trades came out this year, so there are 2 volumes of that. His series Die, which I think I picked last year, is continuing as well. I'm still enjoying that. Something I discovered out of the blue, it's from Boom Studios, I think. It's called Something is Killing the Children. By James Tynion and Werther Del Era. Just really neat, well done horror book. So if you haven't taken a look at that, take a look at it. one of my favorites from the year was Kent State by Durf, who
okay, I did have one. Oh yes, yeah, that was on my list. I wasn't sure if I was going to get to it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Durf is the guy who did My Friend Dahmer, which took place in Ohio. Durf was, I don't know, 12 when Kent State took place. He lived near there. There's a scene early in the book of he and his mom driving through campus when like the National Guard is there or something, not on the day it happened, but just kind of to establish that, this was his neighborhood. So he was there. But then it goes into the events of Kent State and the murder of students by the National Guard and everything that led up to it. And it's meticulously footnoted. His research is really well done. A lot of the dialogue and things that are there are direct quotes from source material. It's much like My Friend Dahmer, not necessarily a happy book, but this is the kind of thing that I like pointing out to people who comics
superheroes.
Right. Yeah. This is not a superhero book. This is a really well done history of the events at Kent State.
It's a documentary. And
yeah.
I bought it when it came out. I was like, I like Durf and I like that kind of thing. We've mentioned before Safe Area Garajda, which is one of my favorite books, and he has a new one out this year too but I haven't read it yet.
I haven't read it yet. I just discovered that like a week ago.
I bought it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
When the Kent State book came out by it's Joe Sacco, by the way. That author. But when the Kent State book came out, I was like, I'm into this. I bought it. I read, I'm going to say the first 20 or 30 pages, and I set it down. It is somewhere in my house and I cannot find it. And I'm very upset because it was, I was in. I just, went to go eat, and I don't know where in my house it is. I have not seen it in like 3 months. But like I didn't leave because it's COVID, and where would I have gone?
Right. Yeah. Right.
It's clearly here somewhere. So yes. So that's why I wasn't going to recommend it, because I'm like, well, it might not be as good it's like 288 pages, and I've only read the first 20 or 30. So
yeah, no, I liked it a lot. And my other one, the last one on my list, and this just ties into my other fetishes, is Michael and Laura Allred released a biography of David Bowie. I think that was right at the end of last year. I didn't get it until January though, but it's very much focuses on his early glam era. It's beautifully drawn. Mike Allred's art is stunning. Laura as colorist just does some really amazing work on this. This is an era of psychedelia and science fiction and glam rock, and it's very colorful. But it's also, if you're interested in Bowie as a person, you could do worse in terms of biographies of him. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, that sets up an interesting transition.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this is a book that Hannah recommended to me one night when we were recording. I had read about it not long before that, so it was already on my radar, but Hannah's recommendation definitely put me into it. It's Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell, who is an author I've been wanting to check out for a long time. Cloud Atlas is probably his most famous work that the movie was based on. He's an author I've been wanting to get into for a long time and just kept putting it off, or just didn't quite know the right starting place or whatever. But Utopia Avenue comes out, and the basic premise of it is, here's a fictional rock band from the late 60s and their story. And like, okay, I'm in. That's kind of all it takes for me. But then he also tied it into a larger, how would you describe his world, Hannah? Science fiction, magical realism, fantasy, weirdness?
It's like he's very interested in science fiction, fantasy tropes, and he toggles between the two, I think. And he also has like a greater universe where like all his books stand alone.
Right.
If you have read the other books, you'll see recurring secondary characters, which like that's possible because magic, and also because he jumps through time.
I've read a couple of others since reading this, and I've encountered that, like, oh, that's that guy from here. Yeah. So, but they are self-contained.
Yeah, which it means you can start anywhere. And I think that Cloud Atlas or actually Utopia Avenue could be a good entry point, or the Bone Clocks.
That's one of the others I've read.
That's really narrowing it down, I know. As someone who like isn't as into that period or the music, like the period's music as you are. I still really enjoyed it. I think that not knowing everything like just allowed me to just be like, yeah, I'm in this world. I believe it. I really enjoyed some of the characters. I wanted to punch Bruce in the face. I know no one knows it.
Yeah, the characters I thought were really all. I mean, they had individual voices. I thought we got just really good focus on each of them. There's that weirdness we talk about, this larger sci-fi world he has. Just in brief, there are characters who essentially reincarnate over time. And there's a character by the name of Marinus who I've encountered in everything I've read by him. But that's, while it's there, is kind of a secondary part of this book. It's there to tie it into his larger universe. But for the most part, it's just a really well-told story of music and creativity and people working together and becoming famous and surrounded by the whole world of the late 60s music industry. And yeah, for those of us who knows that stuff, the number of obscure musical references that are in there, just like, I know that guy. So, as well as big ones, like they reference, like say David Bowie appears briefly. So it's not like he's unknown, but they mention the manager of Led Zeppelin by name without telling you he's the manager of Led Zeppelin. But I knew that. So.
And what I love about David Mitchell is he definitely references like big things like Disney or the Beatles, and then he does something like has lines like, "Man, look." I mean, I'm bastardizing the line, but it's something along the lines of, "The man looked as if he was pondering a deep thought from Immanuel Kant," and it just goes.
A sentiment that you probably have frequently.
And like it's like I also read that as like he's also kind of like making fun of the idea of pondering deep thoughts from Immanuel Kant, and that delights me.
Again, also a thought that you have regularly.
I have a lot to say about Kant that we will spare you because 2020 has been hard enough, I think.
And we have a show on it, actually. You may have missed.
Actually, weird transition. Speaking of Kant, I read a book that nothing. It has like no resemblance to Anthony Kant. But I did think of him when I read it, and that was Courtney Milan's The Duke Who Didn't. It's a low angst romance novel set in 19th century, like in a place called Wedgeford. And it's, I think a lot of people have described it as like a retelling of Persuasion. And it features characters of color, specifically the Duke, who is the main male character, is half Chinese. And he's like coming back to meet his childhood sweetheart, Chloe Fong. And it's really interesting about how it actually like rewrites thoughts about like land and nationhood and like belonging that you see like thought about in Austin and like 18th century philosophy writers like Kant. And it's extremely smart, but like in a way that's accessible to people who have never read Kant or even Jane Austen and who do not care. But delightful. And like if you liked Bridgerton but thought, I wish they like would have acknowledged like problems in the period, this does that. So it's like Courtney Milan. I've read a lot of Courtney Milan's books. It's really interesting. It's like the first book I read like in actual book form after I finished my dissertation. So it was a while ago. Would read again. Looking forward to like more books in that series because it looks like it will be a series. Also, lots of like talk about food and really like just like really nice descriptions about food. And
I like conversations about food.
Yes. So yeah, like
is this like a don't read on an empty stomach kind of book?
You will be hungry,
or do, and just have snacks nearby.
Yeah, but it's delightful. And like even like Courtney Milan like tweeted when it was like coming out, she's like, "This is like the lowest angst thing I've ever written," which is good because the world sucks right now. Again, not a direct quote, but I was like, "Yep." Ordering this from the library.
Mav, you posted something recently, something you read and really dug, and I put it on my to-read list, and I can't remember the title. It
is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, and it is the best book I've read in years. Okay. I cannot. this is I don't know if mentioned it on the show before. If you're familiar with the concept of a passing narrative, and for those who don't know, passing is originally it's kind of a racial studies term that's kind of gone into transgender studies, but passing refers to the period of time. Actually, it could be any time, but very much early to mid 20th century, when in order to gain more social acceptance, a lot of African Americans who were light skinned enough would simply pretend to be white. They would pass. They would do everything they could to pass in to formulate new identities. And
like George Harriman, creator of Crazy Cat.
Yes, George Harriman, creator of Crazy Cat, famous cartoonist who no one outside of his family knew he was a black man until decades after he was dead, and someone was writing a biography on him and discovered his birth certificate, and it said, "Oh, this says Negro." And they went and asked. I think
it actually said colored.
Colored, yeah. And they went and asked his grandson, and he's like, "Yes, my grandfather was black. We all know that. It just he started hiding it, and then he pretended until he died, and no one ever questioned it." Yeah. So there's a famous novel by Nella Larson called Passing, which is about this concept. It also happens in the LGBTQ community with transgender people who will, who for different reasons but related, how well can you pass as your gender identity as opposed to your birth gender, your assigned at birth gender, and this sort of thing. And there are books about this sort of thing in to varying degrees of goodness over time. This is the best one I've ever read, by far. And that includes the preeminent one, which is Nella Larson's Passing. The concept here is there are two twin sisters in I believe the book starts in the mid 60s, civil rights era, late 50s, mid 60s. And they live in a small outside of, New Orleans, Louisiana town, called Mallard. It's a fictional town. And this town has a large African American population who happens to be very light. And one of the things that happens in this town is there is racism against darker African Americans from the lighter ones. And this is a thing that actually is historically accurate and continues in some places to this day. There is a tendency for some lighter skinned blacks to look down upon darker skinned blacks because racism is that ingrained in this country. So everyone in this town delights in how light they are. And at one point, there's these two twin sisters, Desiree and Stella, and they run away from home. They run away to New Orleans and try, for whatever reason, they're sick of their small town, essentially. So when they're like 15 years old, they run away and they live on their own. And while out there, in order to get a job as a receptionist, Stella starts passing as white because she knows they won't let her into the building if she's black. And she continues to. She's successful at it. And eventually she decides, well, if everybody believes I'm white, I'm just going to be white. And she leaves her twin sister and she moves away with her white boyfriend who does not know that she's black, and their lives diverge at this point. So Desiree goes on to lead a life where she leads life as a light-skinned black woman, and Stella goes on to lead a life as a kind of dark white woman. And they don't talk for years. And then they each have a daughter. And then fast forward, because the book's told non-linearly. So so it jumps around in time quite a bit, but they each have a daughter. And when the daughters are 18, one's at, UCLA and the other's at Southern California, I think USC, and they meet. And the white daughter has no idea that her mom's passing. The black daughter knows that her mother had a twin sister who disappeared, and the daughters discover each other. And so it is a question of how passing affects multiple generations. And is it right to tell someone, hey, in 1970, 1980, whatever year it's supposed to be, 70, it's like 78 when they meet or something like that. Is it okay to tell a poor white girl, you're half black, you might not know it, but you are? Is that an okay thing to tell somebody? And it kind of goes and it plays with with questions of identity, of sexuality, of race, of gender, everything that you can think of in the lenses of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It is amazing.
Yeah, I read the description you put up and it went on my list. So.
So yeah, I highly recommend that book for everyone.
Cool. We want to do music real quick. I know I have a few things, and I think there's a band I was really into back in the early 2000s called the Epoxies. They were all your favorite new wave bands wrapped up into one. They were a new band, but they were really playing up that whole new wave keyboards, makeup, costume, plastic aesthetic. And the lead singer, Roxy Epoxy, Meredith, as she introduced herself to me when I met her at the Rex on the South Side, just recorded an album with a new band called Faux Replica. And like, this means nothing to anybody, but it's like out of the blue, it's like, oh, new music from Roxy. Awesome. So I wanted to mention that. Early last spring, I discovered a singer by the name of Orville Peck, who, by his own description, is a gay cowboy. He wears like a sequined face mask. Before masks were cool. And he does some really solid, like crooning country kind of stuff. It's not modern country. It's very much old style, but there's a crooning element to his voice. He has a really rich, deep baritone. I like his stuff a lot. There's a band I was into in the 70s called Angel that nobody's ever heard of. They were sort of post-glam. I had one album I liked it. I ignored them for 20 years. Then I went back and picked up all their stuff, and then they didn't do anything for 40 years. And they released a new album last year. It's the lead singer and the guitarist, which sounds like an Angel album. So it was just neat to get new music from something I was into in my teen years. And just as a side note to that, the lead guitarist went by the name of Punky Meadows. And the lawyer I'm working with has connections in the music industry and is doing things. And I had a nice phone conversation with Punky Meadows this year. So didn't see that coming when I was 16 years old. A glam-like band I was into a few years ago by the name of Foxy Shazam. I liked their album. I'd have been more into them. I had tickets to see them at the Rex, not the Rex, at one of the other venues here in town. And they had a fight and broke up 5 days before I was supposed to see them. So my tickets were refunded. I never got to see them, and I was sort of pissed off at them and ignoring them. But anyway, out of the blue, they got back together and released a new album, which I like. So those are the ones in passing. The band I really want to talk about, though, is every couple of years I do this, just as a music fan, always looking for new stuff. Once every couple of years or so, I discover a band that just like, this becomes my band of the year. Like I just become obsessive and really digging. It becomes my soundtrack. Like 4 years ago, it was the Struts, who also released a new album this year. I should mention. 2 years ago, is a band from Canada called the Glorious Sons. And this year it was two women who go by the name of Bones UK, Rosie Bones and Carmen Vandenberg. And their album actually came out in 2019. They got nominated for a Best Rock Performance Grammy last spring. They released an unplugged album. Rosie just has this really, I like her voice a lot. I like she has a really thick British accent that comes through in her singing. Carmen is kind of an amazing guitar player. They just have an amazing chemistry on stage. They wrote and recorded everything on their own. They did all their own videos. They have a drummer who tours with them. The album itself is programmed drums. Kind of just solid bluesy rock stuff layered over top of some Nine Inch Nails type industrial rhythms and that sort of thing. It's a really neat mix, but they have been my soundtrack for the year. They have a song about polyamory, which I dig. But the first song of theirs I heard is called Fabulous Freaks and Glamorous Geeks. And that describes most of my friends. So I had to listen to it. It was literally the title that made me go, oh, what's this? So awesome. But so there's their album. They released an unplugged album, and I discovered a week ago that in 2016 they did an album with Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck, who was in the Yardbirds and like legendary guitarist. Mm-hmm. And the story goes like Carmen met him at a party and invited him to one of her gigs. And there was like 10 people at this gig, including him. and he invited them to write an album with him and tour, and they did. So
That's awesome.
So today in the mail, I got my CD copy of a Jeff Beck album from 2016. That's essentially a new Bones UK album to me. So yeah. Anyway, they were my soundtrack of the year. So check out Bones UK.
Awesome.
I'm not getting paid for that.
But if they want to.
But if they want to support this podcast, we are fabulous freaks and glamorous geeks on this podcast.
The new tagline. The tagline to the tagline.
So that's my music bit.
Well, I just would like to quickly say thank you to Kesha, because without her album High Road, which was released in January, I do not think I would have finished my dissertation.
Thank you, Kesha.
No, like really. Like there are a lot of like really joyous songs, just like, going back to her roots as like middle fingers up, I do what I want. But, like incorporating some of like her more like, country stuff into some of the songs, like some of the songs are straight up country. She also has a song about ethical non-monogamy, a song about potatoes, which actually, I feel like was a very
the year of just
appropriate
random bands making polyamory albums.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
that seems much more 1971, but okay.
Yeah. Hannah, what was the song where she was talking about her father? I'm not the Kesha fan that Hannah is, but I actually listened to this album a good bit last spring.
Father-daughter dance.
Yeah, that one just really touched me. I found that song really moving.
And also, I have to say that a song called Birthday Suit manages to use game tones in just a really interesting way to like incorporate it into the music. And, Raising Hell, I think, was the biggest single of the album. I haven't looked at the numbers. But Kesha collaborated on that with Big Frida, and it's really good. And My Own Dance, she uses the lyric "Don't circumcise my circumstance," and it's just 100. Anyway, amazing album. Like both songs that are like heartfelt and like philosophical, and without losing like Kesha's flair. Also, just like big like power anthems. It's amazing. That is all.
And if Kesha wants to support this podcast, we're available for that as well.
Actually, she has her own podcast now.
So she should just come on our show. We'll cross promote. And
there you go. I'm sure.
She needs us. Yeah.
Clearly. She needs the fabulous nerd demographic. I mean, come on. So one last thing before we wrap up. Yeah. 2020. Well, okay, this has happened before, but 2020, I think, was the year that like the fashion industry finally decided that gaming was a thing that they were going to do. At the beginning of this month, actually, Balenciaga, as far as I can tell, released the first ever runway show that was actually a video game. Other fashion brands have like done crossovers with games in the past. Like I think, what is it? I think it's Louis Vuitton made. It was in League of Legends. They made a skin. The Sims has had a couple of designer or like fashion brands got involved in their stuff. But they made basically a railroad video game, which unfortunately you can't play because for some reason they only released it for 2 weeks. I think it's because they didn't want people to discover how buggy it was. But it's very beautiful and has Blade Runner vibes. And we'll leave a link to a playthrough video from a fashion YouTuber that will walk you through it and show you some of the Easter eggs and all kinds of fun stuff. Also, I feel like Wayne, with your Arthurian stuff, might appreciate it because there's a lot of Balenciaga. They've done this a couple of times or similar things in the past, but they do full on medieval armor as high fashion. Wow. And I believe some of them are 3D printed, like they're 3D printing armor or something like that. But it's pretty cool. So if you're like fashion, but also games, and this has become an ongoing theme. If there's a couple more that come out, we might do a show. There's also a Complex Con, which is a streetwear fashion brand, did an entire, streetwear con virtually. And the main thing I loved about it, okay, there were other things I wasn't able to attend because it was during work hours in my time zone, but I saw some of the recaps. My favorite thing about it was that they coordinated with various restaurants in the world. So if you were in most major cities globally and you were participating, you could order from like in-game street vendors and then like whatever the local version of Grubhub would bring food to your house. And it was just, I don't know, it was very pleasing. So things that unfortunately, if you missed, were time limited events, so we actually missed them. We can't go back. The recaps are exciting. So you know what?
Yeah, and
gaming and fashion. Hopefully, we'll get some better costumes in the future in our avatars.
And let me throw in a correction. I'm looking up the video to note it here, and it's Filthy Freaks, not Fabulous Freaks. So it's Filthy Freaks and Glamorous Geeks. As much as I listened to that, my brain just seized up and said the wrong thing there.
Just to be filthy.
Yeah. Well,
because you're thinking of us, and then clearly the fabulous part, you know.
That's true. But as Mav knows, that Filthy Freaks probably describes my friends better than
little combi. So on that note,
we resolved nothing.
Yeah. No, we resolved you should go read and watch and listen to and view and do all these things from the safety of your own home.
And I hope everybody else found cool stuff this year, guys. It was a rough year for that. You know,
there are, and I think, I mean, what we did resolve it is, I think when we started doing this, I mean, I sat down last night to make my list, and I was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't leave. And you know, we just talked, we just rattled off, I'm going to say 30. I'm sure the title of this video or podcast, depending on how you're listening to it, says the exact number, because in the future I've counted as opposed to just listening. But we listened to, read, watched a lot of stuff this year. There was a lot more that went on during the middle of the pandemic than you'd think. And there's stuff that I didn't feel good enough to, I was like, oh, I kind of like this in the moment.
It didn't make the cut.
But it didn't make the cut. So there's a lot of stuff. So it's nice to know that, even locked in the middle of an apocalypse, we did have good content, which is awesome.
Yeah.
There's always to watch some of it. I mean, apparently we've all been assigned to watch Bridgerton, but
you have.
but there's other things that there are other things that like I'm interested in now. I've got music to listen to. I've got TV shows to watch. I do want to go out and see Emma, the film. That was so that's definitely.
When go out, you mean click your HBO Max?
Right, yes.
Go out. I'm going to go out of the room that I'm in now.
Go to the living room, push the button.
That's exactly it. I have a recording studio with no TV where I'm going to go out of, and then I'm going to go into the room literally next door, which has a television in it, and I will enjoy the film Emma.
All right.
Another drink. So, yeah.
Well, I hope everyone had a great 2020.
No.
We're not that far. We're not. Not that far.
I do have one more recommendation of something that everybody missed. That's
sure.
Academic text, because
Oh
no, it's called Ages of the Black Panther, edited by friend of the show, Joe Dorowski, with an essay by me. So
that I accept.
That one's self-serving. It actually is good. I've read some of the other essays by other people, several of whom have been on this show that you'll recognize. And I definitely recommend that book. And we're gonna have to talk. I know we've been talking about doing shows in the future about sort of academia and academia as it relates to popular culture text. One of those things that we want to talk about. So in the meantime, go out and read that book so that you're caught up. Just because it's self-serving for me,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, aside from reading academic articles by me, Colin Drumhanna, where can people find you?
You can't really. You can find me here, I guess. I think 2020 has taught me that social media bores me and I'm tired, but
that's sad. It means there's more of you for us. We are the exclusive Hannah Rogers venue for all of your Hannah Rogers content. Comes from Box Podcast. And Katya.
As always, you can find me at Just That Nerd Kid on Instagram. Although I feel like I, like Hannah, have also just grown bored with social media. Everyone's posting the same 5 things over and over again. It's unless it's sewing content. I'm here for sewing content, which really, only if you are also here for sewing content should you follow me on Instagram.
I don't sew, but I find your Instagram interesting. I mean, you have great clothes that are always nice to look at.
No one else has.
And
by default.
My mother looked at your Instagram the other day, inspired by the Queen's Gambit show, and she enjoyed some of your dresses. So there you go.
Aww.
And speaking of ignoring social media, Wayne.
I have my Instagram. I'm still doing photos, though. With weather and job, I'm posting more older stuff right now. But I'm still doing that. It's what, Tetrock 2017, 20. So I forget.
I love that you don't know your own social media handle.
Because they're all different. And that one I picked. Whatever year I started, I threw the date on there, and I forget what year it was.
Oh.
I thought it was the year you were born. Wayne was born in 2017.
Yes, I will be 4 this year.
Well, I have not given up on social media. I'm here for you people. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, all of the places, always at Chris Maverick. You can follow the show, all those same places on all of social media at Vox Popcast. And you can follow the show's blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where you can look at our calls for content and see what we're talking about next week. You can enjoy the new website design, which, we updated for 2021. It's a little different. And you can leave a comment on this show, letting us know what else we missed and that you think we should check out that might become a show in the future. Or if actually what I really like to know is if you read or watch any of the things that we talked about because you were inspired by us, leave us a little note. Let us know in the show notes in the comments or in the YouTube comments, however you're listening to the show. Leave us a note and let us know that, we inspired you to go out and read something or listen to something or watch something.
Even if you thought it was crap.
Yeah, well, let us know. Maybe you think we're crazy. I mean, that would be interesting. I would like to know if people enjoyed Vanishing Half as much as I did, or whatever movie, Emma, Bridgerton. Should we do a Bridgerton show? We don't have a choice, but should we do a Bridgerton show? Let us know in the show notes.
and send in your critiques of Bridgerton because I have a lot of them.
Okay.
Despite my general enthusiasm.
And if you enjoy the show, and we certainly hope you do, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever the hell else you get podcasts from, and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, especially because that helps other people find the show. Especially if you don't just leave us a rating, if you write us a review, if you write a little something and tell us what you enjoyed about the show or what you like about the show or tell other people, that makes the algorithm privilege us and it makes us feel good inside. And
tell all the people who may have missed us in 2020.
Yes.
Missing.
Oh, that's a good one.
Indeed.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good one. I was just going to make a joke about us being a quirky little Marxist show, but
I mean, also that. We'll just tell them that they've missed the quirky little Marxist show.
You have in 2020, you missed the best little quirky little Marxist show. So like and subscribe and all that jazz. I'm now really old. Anyway, I would like to thank Maximilian of Vaughtmore Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd like to thank all of you for listening for the last year. It's another year of the show, guys. Crazy. I'd like to thank, we have no guests. So I just like to thank it's like I usually take the guests right there. I'd like to thank my 3 lovely co-hosts, all 3 of you, for making this the most fun I have all week. And we'll see you next time. Bye.